iHeartRadio presents Podversations, a weekly discussion with the biggest names and influencers in podcasting.
Hello and welcome back to the iHeart Speakers series, where we get a chance to chat with some of our favorite podcasters, creators, producers. We've talked about this fact a few times before, but early in the pandemic, we started seeing a shift in what listeners were looking for from podcasts. Of course, true crime is and remains a huge category, but people started thinking about other categories in a much more real way. One of those categories that we've seen an explosion in is the idea of a rewatch podcast, of fans of certain shows being able to go back and look at times that were more comfortable for them, or to sort of have this nostalgia element of being able to say, I want to go back and revisit one of my favorite shows. And today we're going to get a chance to talk to two of the stars of a show that has seen tremendous interest since its initial run. We're, of course, talking about Glee today, and the stars of our Glee rewatch, which is called And That's What You Really Missed. Kevin, McHale, Jenna Ushkowitz, thanks for joining us. Good to see you both. One of the things that's been super interesting for me about rewatch shows is getting to see this sort of multi-generational element to it. And what I mean by that, I got to go to one of the Drama Queens, which is a One Tree Hill rewatch, and going to one of their live events last year. And there were two generations that were showing up. There were like the original generation that grew up with the show. And then there's those that are maybe 15, 20 years, sometimes even more younger, that are discovering the show for the first time. And both of these fan bases were just super pumped to be there. And I'm curious to hear from you guys. Maybe Jenna, I'll start with you. Is that something that you've seen from, obviously people are now watching it. My daughter, I mentioned, for the first time, and then gets excited to hear you guys on a podcast. But is that something you've seen from the Glee fan base?
Oh yeah, certainly. It's slightly jarring because we've been out in the world recently, just going about our day, and we're getting recognized by people again. And we were, it happened probably right as we were coming out of pandemic in person again. And Kevin and I both felt it, and we were like, what's going on? Why are people recognizing us? Why are people, kind of following us around again? And we definitely saw, thanks to the, it was on Netflix and now Disney, Hulu, and, these generations of kids that were too young to watch it when we were on the air, who are now able to go back because of the streaming services and the way that people are able to watch these old shows again in revival form, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing and really cool. And obviously some of the guests that we've had on our show, some of the amazing guest stars like Jennifer Aspen, she's saying that she is now a big hit at her daughter's school because all of her kids, her daughter's kids are like, friends are watching it. So we're all definitely feeling it in a different way. And it's really, it's pretty amazing that, we're able to see it like this, because back in the day when people were on hit shows, they didn't get that kind of feeling unless you were syndicated and you were on like Nick at Night or USA. So we're definitely feeling that in this new form.
Yeah, it's a whole new thing. And we get questions from our listeners, from your listeners, and then in finding out that we were going to be doing this chat today, one of the questions I hear most often was, were you guys really best friends like immediately when you started the show, or did it take some time? Kevin, maybe I'll ask that question to you.
I wish I had something juicier to tell you, but it was pretty immediate, and we were and are all still best friends and talk frequently. Jenna and I obviously are now forced to spend extra time together, which is by design. And so that's obviously great. And we all try to find other ways to keep working together and keep getting together because we're just gross and obsessed with each other. It's always been that way. And I think that's also why people liked it, because they could see that. They could feel that chemistry that was not forced. We didn't have to act that part out. Yeah. And we were all just kids having a great time doing the show. And I also think when you go through such a life-changing experience together, it's a very specific experience. And fortunately for us, we have so many people to share that with.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times I feel bad for like musicians, or, when their career explodes, but they don't have necessarily anyone to turn to, like, remember that thing, because no one else is exactly in their shoes. I know Jenna was exactly in my shoes and vice versa, where when we can reflect and look back at these times, she'll understand something on the very deep layers that I will, because we were there going through it together.
Well, what was maybe let's talk about the hardest and the best parts of it. What were the most challenging parts of being on a hit show like that at that age?
Yeah, I think I think some of the most challenging things were exactly that. We were in our early 20s, kind of, still figuring out our lives and what we wanted to be when we grew up. And there we are, thrown into this show where, all of us, I would be safe to say, maybe except for Jane Lynch, this was like our claim to fame. And kind of experiencing it in like a small way of like the Beatles, especially on tour, of like what that might have been like for them, being followed around throughout each city, you're not being able to go anywhere. And then, with the show in particular, like feeling so kind of oversaturated with Glee in a way where people were like, are you sick of us yet? Aren't you sick of us? The challenging things for us were that nobody could understand what we were going through. And yet we were in the tabloids being seen as Glee wild children and getting crazy and partying. And we're like, we don't have time to really get like that. Maybe at somebody's house, we had a couple too many drinks, but like, it's just this sense of like, nobody really could understand what we were going through except for us. So it like really kind of trauma bonded us in a way. And the hardest thing about it was the hours, truly, like the hours and the lack of mental health, talk about mental health in the workplace. I think not having the support of dealing like they have on American Idol, of having therapists on, on set when you get kicked off, because these people are kind of pushed to fame overnight. It's like there was a big challenge of feeling like you have to stand up for yourself, but you don't want to feel like you are complaining, because then you don't want to lose your job. So there's this fine line that I think we had to toe, in the sense that we were grateful to have these jobs. We were, but we were under contract. We had to do the things that were asked of us. But in the same token, nothing like this had ever existed before. So we were the guinea pigs for probably the hardest people working in Hollywood at the time. So that was like the biggest challenges for us in both the insides and the outsides of being on set and off.
Yeah. Well, maybe let's go to the other end of it. What was the best part about it all?
I think the first thing was getting to, I always said we just got to be clowns every day. We shot at Paramount, which is the most beautiful studio, I think, in LA.
Yeah.
And we got to be with our best friends every day. We all come from a musical background, and we got to, join the things that we loved, which was acting and music. And we got to do that every single day. We got to impact people's lives. I know it sounds so overly politically correct, but that's how it felt.
Yeah.
Like I would drive through those gates every day. I'm like, this is crazy. I get to go shoot a television show now. And coming back after every season, it's like, wow, and people are liking it.
Yeah.
We didn't know if it was going to work. And it's not like it came out and all of a sudden it's the biggest show.
Yeah.
It did grow pretty rapidly. But for those first few months, we're like, I think this is going well. We're not entirely sure. And then with success comes like, oh, we got to go on Oprah. And then the same weekend, we got to go perform at the White House and meet all these people, like anyone you can imagine, we just got to meet. I remember one time we were at some award show and like David Beckham came up to me so I could take a picture with his children. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're the most famous person in the entire world. And so we obviously, my bucket list didn't exist. And then through Glee, it was being created in real time, and then things were being checked off just as soon as they were put onto the list.
Yeah. And I'm hoping you told David Beckham to buzz off, be like, I don't have time.
The coolest thing, I took pictures, and then like a couple years later, I ran into him at a restaurant, and then he came up to me again. He's like, Kevin. And I got to introduce two of my best friends who are from Brazil and diehard soccer fans. And I was like, oh, David, this is so-and-so. And I was like, you guys owe me for life. And so it was those sorts of things. Like, we got to go on tour, and like being able to have your family and friends. When you're on set, you can't have everybody come watch you. It's a place of work. When you get to go do things and actually interact with the people, I think in our second tour, we did arenas, and it was in 4 different countries. we performed for 500,000 people in 6 weeks. And it was hard. We had 3 days off between the end of the season and the start of the tour. We put up an arena tour in 4 days. Like, we were worked very, very hard to the bone. However, in those moments where we could get past that and realize what a gift the opportunity was and how unique and special it was, like, oh, we're just doing 7 sold out shows at the O2 Arena in London. That is not something we'll ever get to do again. And that's not something most people will ever get to do.
Yeah.
And to be at that level for several years and have family and friends get to come participate in that was just so, so special. And as tiring and as hard as we worked, it felt like a privilege to be able to get to work that much and do something that was bringing people a lot of joy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jenna, to let you talk about something exciting as well. You guys had the chance. You got this really big win when you got to have Glee creator Ryan Murphy on the show. What was that like? Because again, I don't know if everybody knows this, but he'd really not talked about Glee until the interview. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it all came together. We were obviously talking to iHeart about bringing this podcast and this rewatch show back in a new and intentional way. With the eyes of 2020, through the lens of 2022, after being through a pandemic, after being through our third cast member and friend passing away.
Yeah.
There was something about it that felt like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're going to do it the way we want to. And that was something that was really important to both Kevin and I. And one of the other caveats was having Ryan Murphy's blessing, because through the 2020 experience, through Naya Rivera's death, we had this reckoning with Ryan where we all got to kind of air our grievances with the show, having been able to step away from it and reflect on it from, for multiple years, just it's just a different perspective that you get. And Ryan Murphy came on. He was so excited. We didn't know how he would react. He's like, I'll come on anytime. I'm so excited. I don't really talk about the show. And this was really the first time that he talked about Glee. And the way that he came on was absolutely incredible. And we are so grateful that he set the tone for our podcast. And I don't think we were really expecting that. I think we were expecting for him to come on and say some things and, just give us his blessing and really like kick off the show. But he really made us rethink the way that we wanted to go about recording the rest of our episodes. And it really gave us a different intention of how our guests were able to kind of unload in a more honest and raw and authentic way. Not to like crap on the show, but like to actually just talk about your experience in the, like, he kind of made it acceptable for us. And that was such a gift. It made us even more excited to do the show, and it's been really rewarding. And like Kevin was saying, about all the good things that we've been able to do, to be able to reflect on it for, having stepped away from it now, you're able to go back and go, wow, I wish I had appreciated the tour more, or some of these things that we weren't able to because we were so deep in it and thick in the vortex. And so it does give us a different way to look back and say, I am grateful for that now. So it's just, I don't think the show would be the same had we not had Ryan on for the first 2 episodes.
Oh, that's so cool. And you mentioned Naya when you were talking about that earlier. You did a live event actually recently, a pretty amazing live event in the iHeartRadio Theater in the LA area. And can you tell us a little bit about the event and what you did and what it was like?
The event was such a success, and a huge part, and thanks honestly to the iHeart team, where after Naya's passing, we decided as a friend group, we wanted to do something to honor her, to keep her name out there and her legacy alive, because she was such a bright light, such a great friend, and such a talent. And towards the last couple of years of her life, she started working and volunteering for this organization called the Alexandria House in LA that helps women and children in need of housing. And we got together and decided, let's do, it's in the middle of the pandemic, let's do a little charity fundraiser, GoFundMe thing, get our friends together. Everyone showed up and we raised like over $115,000 in 2 weeks or something like that.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And I mean, that's in large part due to how loved Naya was and is, and people wanting to do something good and do good with, the energy. So much bad stuff was happening in the world at the time. And so 3 years on, we've been doing it every year. We told our iHeart team, like, hey, this is what we're doing. Next thing we knew, they came back to us and were like, okay, you can use the iHeart Theater. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Here's the flyer. And it was something that we obviously care so deeply about. Right. We call it Snicksmas, by the way. It's called Snicksmas because Naya used to throw these Christmas parties that she would call Snicksmas, and they were incredible. So we named the event Snicksmas after her Christmas parties. And it meant so much to us to have the support of any outside force. And iHeart, because the reach, I think, is so broad and gigantic, that having that power behind the resources of like, we're making this up every year. And now we have, you guys to help us, like, oh, you can use this site to raise money and this site to do sweepstakes. Like, because we were interested in how can we be more interactive with the fans and the people donating to create a long lasting experience for them to work with Alexandria House going forward, even without Snicksmas. And so we got to throw this in-person event that was also live streamed at the iHeart Theater in Burbank. We had a lot of the Glee cast there. Jen and I hosted it. It ended up being, and that's what you really missed, sort of sponsored a live podcast. And it was just, we felt so lucky. It was great. We had a great team behind the scenes that, again, iHeart made happen. And we ended up raising lots of money, which was, the most important thing.
Yeah.
And we were just, it's a scrappy little organization thing that we do every year. And it felt a little more polished and professional. And that's wholly because of, the iHeart family.
It's an easy thing to get behind when you work with partners that bring the energy and the enthusiasm, the optimism that you both bring. It's a no-brainer for us when you have talent and creators like yourselves. And you mentioned getting a chance to catch up with some of the other cast members. Obviously, the two of you have stayed very close, but there were a lot of other cast members. What has it been like having them all on the show, having so many of them on the show so far? What's that been like?
Oh, it's been amazing. It's actually really funny. There's some people that we thought like, oh, I don't know. They're, people are really kind of on their own paths now, finding their way to not be completely and only identified by Glee, right? Because a lot of us still, we go out in the world and they're like, hey, Tina and Artie. And, that's, it's definitely something that we will deal with for the rest of our lives. But it's amazing that how willing and excited people are still to come on the show and talk about their experiences, especially with us, just because we were all there. It's not like a journalist coming on, saying like, tell us about your experience. We were actually just kind of like reminiscing about what it was like, and then having people be able to kind of peek in on a conversation that we would probably have anyway. So that's like the best part about it, is like it feels very like you just pick up where you left off. You talk about things, you reminisce, you remember, and that's, I think, the most fun that it's been with like Darren Chris did a Roblox Fortnite episode with us, a Christmas episode.
Loved it.
Amber Riley, who just won, the Masked Singer, which is crazy. And she also won Dancing with the Stars. So she came on, and it's been just so gratifying,
Yeah. I know it's a big deal to win a big singing competition, but really to have been in the metaverse, you guys, I hope, are bragging a lot about that.
I actually have.
Yeah, it's good. You should.
Over the holiday break, I was talking to my nieces and nephews. I'm like, if you go on Fortnite right now, guess who you'll see?
Yeah.
And my brothers and sister are like, what are you talking about? Like, don't worry, I'm speaking the lingo to the kids. Don't worry about it.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
You guys are old. I know what's up.
Exactly.
That's pretty
whip it.
awesome. Yeah. I got the double bonus points, both for working with you two, but also for finally doing things on Roblox and Fortnite. So
you're in it.
Been bonus points here too. But I know I said it before, but just want to say thank you to both of you again for being such pleasures to work with, for putting a great show out in the world. Your relationship and the fact that you have this amazing rapport between the two of you comes through in every episode. We love being your partners, and just want to say thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. You and your team have made this so much fun for us. We look forward to doing our episodes every single week. We're excited about it. And I think because of that and the support you've given us, we've been able to get all of our friends and have these amazing guests and put out a show that hopefully everyone enjoys.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks again. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll be back with you again next week.
Podversations is a production of iHeartRadio. You can find more from the biggest names in podcasting on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.